This is Ian Richardson, Games Level 3 Year 2 Extended Project, and this is my presentation of Operation Soundless. Why should anybody care about this project? For me, people that are deaf should still be able to experience the world of games. Just because they have hearing impairments shouldn't limit them to what they experience. The genre, I'm kind of debating a couple of genres. Some of them are horror, action, and a narrative-based sort of games. With horror, I feel like having that sort of element with sound, with no sound, and just visual sound is quite an interesting aspect to sort of go into. With action, for most sort of games and whatnot they have a lot of action, it'd be quite interesting to go again. And then narrative, with my research that I've done previous in my literature review on David Wren and Bennett Foddy, and how they created narrative games with Getting Over It and The Beginner's Guide, and how it was solely focused on having a narrative to sort of direct their game. And I found it quite an interesting way, and that's why I'm sort of going towards a narrative sort of genre, but I also want to keep it to a horror. The prior research I conducted, I don't have the animations for time because of the presentations.
Slow down, Hayden, it's fine.
Oh,
It's alright.
but I have the watch, my radio, and my piano. All of them are animated. The reason why I wanted to animate them, I kind of also found it while I was doing these two designs. Not so much with the watch, but I think you might be able to see that, like with the piano keys sort of moving. When I sort of realised I wanted to create, after we had discussions about this, creating a soundless sort of game, having them sort of visual cues of the piano keys moving gives a sense of the sound that people can hear, basically, in quotations, for if you're hearing impaired. Same goes with the toggles on the radio. Like, you see the toggles and you know it's going to make it sound like the frequency. My target market in industry context is most going to be, for the most part, it's quite across the board, people that are deaf, but it's mostly found within elderly when you get older, and then some people are born with it, like children. The reason why I'm sort of targeting towards children and elderly is because I want the younger people to experience games, really, because like they've been disadvantaged straight, I guess, from birth, or maybe later on when after they've been born, and like they never get to hear that sound. I want to sort of create a sound world for them. The same goes with elderly. The technical requirements and resources is 3ds Max to create the models, Unreal Engine to obviously make the game, and then Photoshop for the textures. And then I need to conduct more research throughout the entire project. Legal ethical representations. It's basically representation of the deaf community and representing them in a respectful manner. Health and safety, eye strain and sleep deprivation, since a lot of this project's going to be at home as well because of time constraints. So that's quite point. What is the project? The game is pretty silent with just visual cues symbolising sound while you're being pursued by an entity. That ties into the horror genre I'm looking into. I want to explore how visual sounds can be created to convey sound for people that are deaf, as I find it interesting and a neglected part of the gaming sort of community. The game will only be available on PC for reasons at college, obviously. But I'm interested in the inclusion of like controllers and having that sort of vibration within the controller as a sense of sound, because that is a way that a lot of people that are deaf or hearing impaired see or feel sound is through the vibrations. So it's quite an interesting way that I'd like to explore. Now SWAT. The strengths of this project is because of its uniqueness and the directions where I can take this project. There's following back to my genre, there's many directions I feel like I can go with this project. The main weakness of this project is the timescale. And like I've touched on, I will be working on this in my own time in my home to make sure it gets done as much as possible. I like to display what opportunities my project provide. I like to be able to display this work to my university I hope to go to in September, as well as using this as a network portfolio piece to showcase my creativity and ability. The potential threats mostly are circumstances, events, obstacles such as timescale and things out of control. My stretch goals, the first goal that I want to hit is to have all the models completely done to the best of ability, textured, and then in the game, after that I'd like to add a sort of narrative following back to my genre. And thank you.
Oh, good. Okay.
Any questions?
Can you take it away?
Yeah, there's a lot that I like about what you're trying to do, Aidan, and I think it's quite novel. It's very novel, and you're looking at an under kind of served area. I do have some questions about it though, but there's some good, clear context, and it's good that you know the requirements of your project. I think you might need to do some more research into things like accessibility in games,
Okay.
and how developers design for accessibility.
Okay.
There are actually a lot of games out there for people with visual impairments,
Yeah.
and that's something that might be worth looking at, but purely because it gets you thinking creatively about how people approach designing games for people with various different impairments. Okay, there are some couple of big questions here. The first one is, what are you really trying to find out? Yeah, and that's something you need to be clear on. What is it that you're trying to find out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so invested into this.
Yeah, because one of the things that I worry about sometimes is it's almost like you talk quite fast and almost in quite a fragmented manner, and sometimes it's like you almost don't finish your thought before you move on to the next thing. So what I'm concerned about is almost that you haven't fully formed your idea because you haven't finished that thought before you move on to, you almost say visualization of sound, 3D models, but you haven't finished that thought about that. And in terms of what you're talking about 3D models. I'm not entirely clear on what your outcome is going to be here. You said 3D models with animation, and then you start talking about a narrative as a follow-up. But I'm wondering if it would make more sense to put these into an environment, because really what you're talking, it seems to me that you're talking about how you represent sound in games in a horror context, and maybe how you would elicit a response from the audience. That's different from how you tell a story. And I'm just a little bit unclear what your goal is and what the outcomes are and how they connect together.
I mean, I'm kind of on the same wavelength as what you're saying as well, is that you've got a great idea for a project and you're including the hearing impaired community, which is brilliant, and I love that you're doing that. But if you're latching onto a genre, this is something I've sort of maybe thought of, is that's not going to be inclusive for everyone, because if you're doing horror, it's not inclusive for sort of the younger audience. So actually already you're
It depends on the horror.
But that's going to be my question. So are you going to have it sort of, quite scary horror? Or are you going to have it sort of, like Goosebumps horror, where it's... Do you know what I mean? So this is maybe something you need to think about, because it needs to be all-inclusive if you're doing this or not. Either way, or maybe you can have two outcomes where you've got for a younger audience and an older audience, whatever. But one of the things that I am sort of particularly sort of questioning, like Adam, is the outcome and the platform. And what is actually going to be there. Because I think it might even be better just to have prototypes of things rather than like a final outcome.
It's also...
Well, that could be like the stretch goal, couldn't it?
But it's how those things demonstrate communicating sound, because the concern that I've got here is that what will happen is you can produce, say, animations like you've done of a piano with the keys playing, but that's an animation that could fit in any game, let alone a game that is designed for people with a hearing impairment,
Yeah.
and if they've never heard a piano, then how does that help them?
Yeah.
You know, so I'm confused about whether you're designing a prototype for a game for those people or the assets for a game for those people, in which case you need to have what the game is clearly defined and the mechanics clearly defined, so that then you could produce assets that would communicate those things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it could even be cues. So I mean, for example, in comic books, when something happens, like if someone hits someone, you have a pow, bang.
Yeah.
You know, it could even be words or something
Yeah,
that come off of.
The game 13 does this.
Yeah. So I mean, I would sort of say it's approved, but I think the thing you need to do is rework your proposal and actually sort of thinking about your outcome and actually what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Tying into your audience and you know whether actually you need to have a genre or not. That would be my.
Do you think it should be like a genre, like?
I think it should be accessible. I think for everyone, and maybe even sort of just thinking about sort of just having it like a simple game, perhaps where there's actually no narrative. You know, something.
In like a puzzle game.
Well, a puzzle game, or you know, something like Mario. I mean, it doesn't. You know, the only thing you know about Mario is he's going there to save his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And you've got to go overcome the obstacles. It doesn't have to even be characters. It can be shapes or something.
Yeah.
So I think maybe sort of think about that genre.
I mean, in a way, I understand what you're doing with horror because, you know, as you say, it relies on sound so much.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if you had a narrative game, the way that you can get around most of the issues with hearing impairment is through subtitles.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what you need to maybe look at is and consider is when is it that sound is important in terms of game functions and game mechanics?
Yeah.
What games require sound as a fundamental part of the mechanics, and then how would you solve that problem for people with hearing impairments?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So your first question really is to look at games and look at games where sound is a key part of the mechanic, and then how you'd solve that problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to stop it there, Aidan. But like one of the things you need to do is rewrite your proposal and your